Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another recording of my podcast, which I do live here on Facebook because it feels better that to even assume I'm talking to someone else than just having a conversation with myself. But here's the weird part about that. I have learned over the years that I'm a verbal processor and I'm also auditory. So I speak my ideas, I speak things, and then I listen later because that's the way I retain. Audiobooks, another really good example. Audible has been really important to me because I listen when I'm driving or when I'm going for a walk, and then a lot of times I'll get the actual book and I'll go back and reread it and see the words. So I know that about myself, which is why I use this platform to kind of work things out. Um, I was going to say, well, work things out in public because if I'm not willing to share what I'm working on with people, then I'm not really following my own invitation to be real. And that's what this podcast is all about. It's called Circle Up and Get Real, where REAL is an acronym for Radical, Energized, Authentic, and Learning Focused. I won't get into that here, but I do have a course coming up June 3rd. It's a 6-week course where we spend 2 hours a week in live virtual class, I guess, going through some concepts, and then the rest of the week you take what you learned or what we talked about and apply it to your life. Come back the next week and share what you've noticed. I believe that we can't possibly do better in the world unless we know better. And if we're not willing to be open to learning, then really there's no point. You would not be my audience if you were somebody who was, according to the book I've been reading, 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, if you were closed, if you were unconscious, closed, defensive, committed to being right. That's not the audience that's attracted to these conversations. So thank you if you're here, because we are interested in being conscious in our leadership. And that's so the point of all of that. I'm setting all this up because I'm going to stop and do the countdown, and this will be for the recording, but this is the setup. And if you're here, thank you, viewers who are here. Please feel free to put comments here, and I will address them as I see them. Sometimes I get on a roll, and I do notice your comments, and I don't address them just because I'm on a roll with a different thought. But please share them anyway. I love engagement, and I love that we can have a virtual dialogue, even if it's in comments. I want to prove this point. There's been a lot of reasons to be upset recently. I mean, we have a lot of reasons to be upset in the world. And if you watch social media at all, which I'm not saying you should because it's yucky, but I've watched comments. Morning, Christy. Oh, I'm so glad you're here because, Christy, this is a conversation I'd love your feedback about too. So if you can stick around, it won't be all that long, but I'd love your take, and you can just type in the comments. But there have been a lot of ways, a lot of reasons lately to get upset about things. And I've been watching comments on social media posts, and they are so mean, mean, bullying. And I think there's another way. And I would like to believe that hi Dawn. Oh, good. This is going to be fun, you guys. Let's make this a really rich conversation. That I believe it's possible to have a dialogue even in comments, because maybe especially in comments when you have your name on them. Dawn and Christy are friends of mine and friends of each other, so this could be really fun. There's an opportunity to grow and learn, all of us together. So I want to talk today about leadership, the concept of leadership. And I'm going to stop now because I'm going to do a recording that I'll put up as a podcast later. So with that, I'm going to just do the countdown and we'll go from there. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Circle Up and Get Real, where we talk about things that matter with people who matter. And I'm recording this live on Facebook, as I always do when I don't have a guest. Today is a little bit different because I have 2 friends who are actually watching live and are in the comments already posting. So it might be a really fun opportunity for us to have kind of a dialogue here. And perhaps Christy and Don, we could make this an actual podcast interview at some point where we are live in this conversation. Today, I want to talk about leadership, this whole concept of leadership, this word, leadership, and what it means and what I'm observing. And I could be completely wrong about all of this. which is why I'm really happy that I have friends I trust who are watching live who can add to this dialogue. But as I think about the word leadership and I dig in and I study it and I have certifications in it and whatever it is, I'm curious about the word leadership. Is it more about the leader or the ship? I learned that from a wise professor I had when I was getting my master's degree. And she broke that word up for me, and I haven't ever been able to think of it differently. What I was thinking about this morning is if everyone who has aspirations to lead a movement, lead something, be a leader, were being a leader, where would the ship be? Good morning, Mary. Thanks for being here. Where would the ship be? Meaning, if everybody's a leader, who is following these leaders? Where's the ship? Where's the ship part of leadership? I am curious and fascinated to observe movements. I'm going to call them movements, but ideas people have that they want other people to get on board with. And there are people who will follow blindly without any discernment because the leader has a lot of charisma. This is from what I first learned in Good to Great, the distinction in leadership levels that Jim Collins uncovered, level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And level 4 leaders on his scale are very charismatic, and people will follow those leaders because they just want to be around charisma. They want to be part of something. I have suffered from FOMO most of my life, fear of missing out. And so I will find somebody who seems charismatic and seems to be going in a direction I want to go, and I will go all in and follow that leader and be on board. And in my experience, I'm not really saying this is the truth for the world, but in my experience, the more I get engaged in someone else's movement, the more I seem to intimidate the leader who started the movement. Now, again, I could be wrong about this. It occurs to me that the more I support and ask questions and want to understand, because one of my strengths is strategic, it occurs to me that that gets threatening to someone who's actually leading the cause. And so I'm wondering if it's even possible to have a bunch of leaders together in one space who can get rid of their ego in the moment that they are not the leader. And if there, it would be possible to have a dialogue of leaders. I guess that's my question. Is it possible to have a dialogue when we have a bunch of leaders? And if Christy, Dawn, Mary have any comments about this or thoughts about this, I'd love to hear them. What I'm witnessing is there are a lot of people wanting me to join their thing, whatever their thing is. I get LinkedIn messages all the time. We can do this for you. We can help you with this. Join our thing. And I'm hesitant to join other people's things because I've joined other people's things so many times in my life and have eventually been kicked out, pushed out, whatever. And I want to start my own thing. And so I would like people to join my thing. And I believe it's possible to have my own thing without having me have to be the leader of it all the time. I don't know. Could be wrong. I'm just curious. Is that something other people are interested in learning about? Because here's what I think. And again, I could be wrong, but I think the leader has to go first. Otherwise, he or she wouldn't be a leader. So if I'm willing to go first and be the one who starts the thing, whatever the thing is, we're going to have a meeting tonight about books in the library, and join me and we'll talk about this. If I am a leader, according to the book, The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, I would be open, curious, and committed to learning. So even though I was the one to go first and I was the one to invite people, then I have to be willing, if I'm in dialogue and in consciousness, to not be the boss, not be in charge of the whole thing, to make the environment such that people feel safe, heard, honored, gotten, their opinions are valued. All of that would have to be necessary if I were to be a conscious leader. And in my experience, there are a lot of people who start a thing and invite a lot of people to come and then tell everybody what to do. And Not that there's anything wrong with that. However, how are we developing discernment? How are we developing our own critical thinking skills if all we're supposed to do is listen to the person who started the thing and has all the answers? And it feels like that's kind of where we've gotten ourselves in the world these days. I think about kids who are told what to think in school. They're told these are the ideas, these are the rules of things, and the kids don't get to think. They just have to follow. So I'm curious, Christy, yes, it is possible, but there's a lot of ego to be aware of and navigate. Depends on if the leader has a specific vision and is unwilling to change and navigate ideas outside of their vision. This is so good, Christy. So I keep thinking about the term cottywomple, which has come up in a couple of my other groups. And cottywompling is, I'm going to look up over here because I have a definition, to travel purposefully toward a vague destination or an unfamiliar maybe destination. To travel purposefully toward a vague destination, which means that I kind of know the vision. I kind of know where I think I'd like us to end up, but I'm open to hearing what you have to add. And so I think in that space, cottywompling is really cool in a leadership invitation. So I've got a couple comments. Ed, I think if we look at leadership as a serving discipline rather than just a title, then we can collaborate more effectively. So servant leadership, I'm here to serve the issue, the topic, the concept, the people. And in that way, coming in with that, Ed, I love that because then we're coming in with that in mind before we even start. Mary says, I think a dialogue between leaders would be awesome and very possible, but they would have to be good leaders. Good leaders build others up, encourage dialogue and sharing of ideas and possibilities. Leaders who are more like dictators are what you are describing as the ones who invite others and then tell them the rules. Ego is difficult to overcome for many. Ooh, such a great topic. Ego. You know, I'll come back. Jodee, thank you for your comment. I'm going to come to it in just a second. Ego is something I've learned a little bit more about since studying Eckhart Tolle's work. Ego, there's a lot more we could talk about with that. But I think what you're saying, Mary, is I am in charge and it is my way or the highway. And what I'm understanding about ego is it's a mask for fear. And if there are only two ways of being a leader or running a meeting or seeing the world, and they are through the eyes of fear or the eyes of love, then ego and fear would be dropped at the door so that love could take over in the dialogue setting. So that's a whole other conversation we can have. Jodee, thank you for keeping doors open. LeaderSHIP, yes, the ship must be the change they want the people on the ship to be, living the leadership. Yes, that's so good. Being authentic, being in integrity. If others are threatened, they are in ego. And when in ego, we are not listening to others. What else did you say? I don't see it as my thing or your thing or their thing. It's a we thing that may be lots of me things growing their thing in sync with the bigger thing. I love that. The thing I choose to grow is love and to celebrate and connect to that in the matrix of the universe. There's room for all. Jodee, if that were the way more people saw the world and we invited people into gatherings like that, I just wonder how that would feel different than everything, this is a sweeping generalization, than most things we've been invited to in the past. So there is room for all. Jodee, thank you for that reminder. Dawn says, I sense my ego, not sure it's ego here, could use some thoughts. Okay. I'm very receptive to other leaders' input with pure intention and or meant to help build. So if we are in the space of everybody coming in with the same foundation, maybe, Dawn, the same invitation, and everybody is trusted to drop their ego at the door, because in dialogue, the definition I use is suspending previous assumptions in order to learn while we are together. That's dialogue. And if we're not willing to be in dialogue, then that wouldn't be a space that we would come into. I'm reminded of a group that I facilitate, having invited someone to come and join us, and that person came to the dialogue and realized rather quickly that wasn't a space that he wanted to be in. It didn't feel right to him, and he self-selected out. That is huge awareness. I love that. There is no judgment. There's no anger about that when somebody says, you know what, this just doesn't feel vibrationally right for me. He didn't say it in those words, but wouldn't it be great if people could say, yeah, that room, not that room. And then they picked the room that caused them to be more of what they are looking to become. Mary says, ego very often masks fear or insecurity. Yep. If you don't feel confident in your leadership ability, you hide that with rules and my way or the highway, in my opinion. That's what Mary says. That's really good. Thanks, Mary. Susie, oh, I love the when I ego. Oh, I love the when I ego. What was the rest? So, Susie, you might have to go back and look at some of the quotes or some of the comments here. When we step into, this is just me thinking this, but when we step into our own greatness, our own skills, strengths, gifts, and we can just be that confidently, I don't think that is ego. Confidence and arrogance are two different things in my observation and in my witnessing. Confidence would be just what is, like who I'm created to be when I'm in my strength zone, my gift zone. And I can be confident about that without being a jerk. When I am trying to prove something to someone, when I am in a space of, man, I hope they don't find me out. I hope they don't recognize that I don't know what I'm doing. Brene Brown calls that bullshitting. That's a whole other topic. But we need to start speaking truth to bullshit, but be civil about it, Brene Brown says. If we don't feel confident, sometimes we talk louder and we try to talk over people. And I think you kind of said that, Mary. There are rules that are put in place that are for others and not for us, the person who created this. Dawn says, perhaps that I yearn for really great dialogue. Yeah, so do I, Dawn. And that's why I use that word so purposefully, dialogue. I have done that for years. And I will tell you that one of the groups that I got asked to leave was a group where I was all in. I would have done everything for that group. And at one point, it occurred to me that I asked too many questions. And I learned later that that group was kind of inwardly on their leadership team mocking my use of the word dialogue. And I would always say, let's have a dialogue about that. And I would purposefully put that word into the conversation because whether we know it or not, words have energy. Words have a vibrational energy. And if we're using words that have a lower vibrational energy, like discussion, when we don't mean to, we're bringing a lower energy into the circle or the place where we're having the conversation. Discussion comes from the same root as percussion and concussion. And if you interpret that the way you would interpret that, I would think, well, it's like a drum, percussion, right? Percussion is what we're talking about. I need to get my idea in there and I'll say it as loudly as I can so people hear it. Where dialogue is more about listening, isn't it? It's more about asking good questions. It's more about helping people and ourselves transform the way we've been thinking from an old way to a brand new way. In transformation, there's no comparison to what was because we're not talking about the past. We're not talking about, like, the way I like to think about that is a butterfly is not a better caterpillar. They're two completely different beings. They're two different creatures. We don't compare one to the other and say, oh, wow, look, the butterfly now became a butterfly. No, caterpillars have an amazing purpose in the world. And so if we could look at everything we've been being as leaders, leading a charge, leading whatever it is we've been leading, and not look back and go, oh my gosh, I was so dumb. I should have done it differently. Should. That has nothing to do with the past. It has everything to do with what we do from today going forward. Is it about the leader? Is it about the ship? Is it about both? Is it about all? If I'm only being a leader and no one's following me, am I still a leader? It has to start with me. For sure, it has to start with me. And maybe there are people who prefer to be by themselves and just do everything on their own. Not me. I'm not wired that way. I'm wired for interaction and collaboration and connection and listening and learning and growing. Not everybody is. I get that. So whatever I would be leading, if I'm authentic, would attract people in that space. So as a leader in that space, I guess going first means going first and then allowing everything else to happen around me. Christy says, intention is huge in both pieces, both the leader and the ship. Right, Christy? Right, intention. There's a power in the intention that we put forth. I'm going back to Wayne Dyer's work. He has a book called The Power of Intention. It's an energetic experience. And the challenge I have sometimes in relaying a message or being a speaker or an author or anything that has to do with words is that words are clunky. Words are so clunky because we don't always have, at least I don't, have the words to articulate what I'm really experiencing and feeling and wanting to convey and wanting to connect about. And because I really identify with the book 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership and working diligently to remain conscious as much as possible, I am committed to being open, curious, and committed to learning. And what that shows me, not in a judgmental way, but in an observational way, is how few people seem to be in that same space through no fault of their own, because I'll always assume positive intent. I'll err on the side of that more often than not. It's hard for me to believe people are consciously evil. I know. I've been called toxically positive before. Yet it's difficult for me to see that. I know it's true. Christy says, I also work a lot with feeling. How do you want to feel in this experience? Yes. How do you want to feel as a leader? How do you want the experience to feel? How do you want to feel after the conversation? This is such important work, Christy, because so few people, in my experience, have ever talked about feelings, especially at work. You put your feelings in a box when you come through the door, you do your job, and you go home. Now, this has changed over the years, thank goodness. But I've been in the workforce long enough to have seen the day when somebody actually said, if you don't want to do the job, somebody's waiting at the door to do it. So if you don't want to do it, there's the door. That's happened. So I'm grateful that we are evolving in our leadership, in our conversation, and in our ability to invite. Perhaps the challenge for all of us is in the invitation. If you see yourself as a leader, who are you inviting and how are you inviting? What's your intention for the outcome? What's your intention for the leader? What's your intention for the ship? And if we do that well, if we do that in an energetic way that would clean up the words if they don't end up landing, we take responsibility for that. We can clean up the words if we said something wrong, if we made a mistake, if we did something that didn't produce what we intended it to. We can clean it up authentically. We can step into our greatness and not be so worried about saying something that one person will hear and then spread it like wildfire. We have an incident that happened in our community this week. I won't get into that, but boy, people want to jump on that bandwagon, don't they? They want to be the first to say the bad news. I believe there's another way, and I will do everything in my power till the day I'm no longer living to attract people into this space, the space that allows them to share authentically and with safety. It's so sad that we have to say you are safe here. We can't assume that places are safe, because there are places where people apparently are trying to be right. Their egos are taking over. They're not aware of their ego, and they don't want to be aware of their ego. That is not this space. So anytime you see me going live, anytime you see anything I'm up to, please come. Please check it out. Please be part of it, because I can't do this by myself. I don't want to do this by myself. I want to build something that lasts beyond my lifetime, where people feel safe to engage, where they feel safe to shore up their own faith and belief in themselves until it's strong enough to turn into confidence, not arrogance, and where we can learn to overcome in the moment our egos, either our little egos which say, I'm not that, I have imposter syndrome, I'm too small, I'm too dumb, whatever, that little ego piece, and the big ego piece, which to me is more obvious because I'm seeing it more often, where people are being mean and bullying. That's just disguising their own fear. And so in the space, I'm going to just tell you about Enlightened Leadership Lab as one. On Mondays from 3 to 4:30 Central, we have these kinds of conversations where we work together to shed light on some of these places where people don't share. EnlightenedLeadershipLab.com. I've also got my Real Me intensive course coming up June 3rd. These are the conversations we have, and then we take these conversations into our lives. It's not just theory. It's something that we can actually use and practice and get better at, so that we don't have to only get better at complaining. We do that so much because there seems to be so much to complain about. We get better at what we practice. So let's practice awareness. Let's practice dialogue. Let's practice consciousness. And if we choose to be leaders, let's lead that and invite people into that. Thank you so much for being with me today. Everybody who was here, Ed, Christy, Dawn, Jodee, Mary, and anybody else I missed, Susie, I appreciate you so much. I appreciate your conversations, your dialogues, your willingness to be a leader and share. So as always, everybody, just go get real. Talk to you again. Bye.